Hello, everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of our podcast series, AI and Sustainability, where we discuss all things AI and sustainable development. I am Nafisa, and each episode we invite special guests from diverse backgrounds and ask them difficult, thought-provoking questions. The question that we're exploring today is, what human-centered approach to AI means in university management? I'm very excited about today's discussion as I'm joined by two distinguished experts from the University of Westminster. Gunter Saunders, the Director of Digital Capability Development and AI Leadership, and Doug Specht, the Head of School of Media and Communication. Together with our guests, we'll dive into the details of how artificial intelligence is actually being used in university management, moving beyond the buzzwords to the real applications on the ground. Stay tuned as we explore what this means for administrators, faculty, and students alike. Welcome, Gunter and Doug. And to kick off this discussion, can each of you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this conversation on AI in university management?
So my name is Gunter Saunders. I've worked in higher education now for over 40 years. I started out my career as a lecturer teacher of molecular genetics and microbiology, did research in that area, eventually became a full-time teacher. My post title now is Director of Digital Capability Development and AI Leadership. So this is a new post put in place to try to take account of the fact that AI is quite a big thing for universities in a variety of different ways.
And Doug, what about you?
In comparison, it sounds like I've done nothing. So I've been in education for about 20 years myself. Came through a background of working high school geography teaching. I'm now the head of school for the School of Media and Communication at the University of Westminster. So that sort of leaves me in two positions. I'm one in a university leadership role where I'm leading a school. And it wouldn't really matter what subject area that was, that leadership of the school involves us wrestling with what AI and technologies might mean for pedagogy, it might mean for how a school is run, how I manage my teams, how I look after our students, and what assessment and learning looks like.
I'm very excited to have two people who actually have teaching background, right? So you're not approaching it just from a perspective of university leadership or university management, but teachers as well. So that's very exciting to me. So just to ground our discussion a little bit, and before we dive deep, let me start by asking, from your perspective, what are some of the persistent or emerging challenges that universities are encountering in terms of management and administration?
We can talk the UK context, but I don't think actually the UK context is unique. I think most universities around the world are facing similar sorts of pressures. There's, rising financial pressures across the higher education sector. We increasingly are under pressure to ensure that we've got appropriate data management, that we've got that we're immune to cybersecurity threats. Our work is hugely online, not that we're teaching online, but we have a huge online presence, that we use lots of online platforms.
So it's also something we don't really think about, right? From if you are not directly involved with technology in university management, you don't really think about, the websites or data management and all the risks that come with it.
It's easy for those things to get sidelined. And actually that sort of brings me to the last sort of point I wanted to make on this is changing internal university mechanisms tends to be very slow in all universities. And that leads us to what some people call a technological debt, where we're using a legacy system to try and solve a current problem. And you couple that with the financial questions and it becomes sort of twofold.
I like what you said, using legacy systems to solve current problems. So how does AI come into it? What role do these innovative, shiny new technologies play in addressing the things that you've mentioned?
I think one of the interesting things about artificial intelligence is, and here I think we're predominantly talking about sort of the large language models that have emerged in recent years and become relatively accessible and starting to be baked into technologies that we already have, sort of things like Copilot within Microsoft's ecosystem, and places like OpenAI and Perplexity are developing their own browsers. So we're starting to see these AIs built into legacy technologies in some ways. And that lowers that bar for a university to be able to engage with them. We don't have to go back and buy in a whole new system. But we can also use some of those things. Once we've got the guardrails in for governance, it's actually quite a low bar to being able to use AI for administrative tasks, sort of repetitive administrative tasks around enrollment, around processing financial aid.
So time efficiency is one of the things that's important, right? It's helping administrators and staff to free up time for maybe more important tasks. I'm sure there are people listening to us right now who are wondering, what does it actually look like in real life? So can you share some examples of how AI has already been implemented in universities?
Of course, we've got members in the AI and University Management Administration implementation group, Tokyo City University, for example. They're using generative AI tools, or AI tools more generally, I should say, to begin to monitor and make assessments and judgments about students' progress and how students can be supported through personalized learning. In my own university, we'll be launching an AI assistant for our student support center, which receives masses of queries in the first few weeks of the new academic year, and often those queries remain unanswered. So we're hoping the generative AI will give some of them the answers they need, which will relieve pressure on the humans at the student center, so they can focus on more concerning or more complex issues that students are bringing to them. I think the other example I'll give you is we've conducted a fairly large proof of concept project where we've rolled out Microsoft Office 365 Copilot to 150 professional services colleagues in the university. We have a total of about 800, and it has shown not only a significant impact on efficiency, but more importantly, it has revealed a significant impact on colleague well-being. So any way that we can kind of take some of that load off of people, right, without affecting the very critical, empathetic human connections that need to be made with students, but we take away those kind of what our vice chancellor calls joyless tasks, right? We remove those joyless tasks and we give people the space to actually focus on the much more significant and important things that the student need from a human being.
I want to hear from Doug. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about AI that you've heard from university leadership or university staff?
The biggest one comes down to there's not too many people who believe that their entire existence is going to be replaced by AI. But there is a sense that your role and your identity as an educator could be eroded or diminished by AI. My conception of AI is that it allows teachers to teach rather than be administrators. But there are many who have the sense that AI will take over the role of teaching. And I think that is a misconception. I don't think teaching between a computer and a human works overly well. And I don't think that that's a replacement for human-to-human learning. And there's also I would say, misconception that AI is a fad. I think the way that we talk about it is a bit of a fad. The amount of airtime it gets at the moment will not continue because it will become a background tool rather than the new tool that we all talk about. If we were doing this podcast 12 years ago, we'd be talking about the big data driven universities.
And now it's sort of a normal everyday thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting that during one of our previous episodes with youth, actually, and they gave a really good example of a calculator and how when that was invented, everybody was freaking out that, okay, people are going to forget math. But now it's such a trivial, sort of old school technology that we don't even think about it.
We can't apply current technologies to an old world, nor apply an old world to current technologies. That's where we end up with this mismatch. And that's where some of those misconceptions sort of emerge.
And it's the things that you mentioned stem a lot from, as you said, the information, right? And how literate or educated people are on the technologies, their capabilities and applicability in certain contexts, right? which kind of brings me to my next question about the necessary skills, right? Both technical and human skills that are very important for university leaders, staff, students to have to make the most out of the technologies that we're discussing.
When Doug and I started 2 years ago to run workshops at Westminster, maybe it was 2.5 years ago, one of the things that I used to try to dispel very quickly in those is that you don't need many technical skills or any technical skills really to make use of and get value from generative AI. What you need really is the capability to iterate, to have a conversation, to think critically, and in a sense, use the generative AI as a co-worker to help you get to where you want to go. I think that's the most significant. I feel it's going to be much more important, or is much more important now, actually, to have some skills or hone your skills, the kinds of skills that AI doesn't have. And these are the human skills, right? The things around empathy, but critically, and this is the last point I'll make, to work with other people alongside AI. Okay, so one really interesting skill that I've seen practiced recently is where somebody who is working with a group of people can actually use AI alongside themselves to help that group get to where they need to be.
Both Doug and you're bringing up this important point of AI is not going to replace essentially people, but it will free up time for us to focus on what's important.
We've seen that in universities before. I'm sure you'll all be familiar with a term called blended learning or flipped learning. For years there was this promise of using technology to change the way that one teaches in a classroom. And I don't think that's ever fully been realized. Okay. But there is a difference with this technology of generative AI. And the big difference for me is that the technologies in blended learning were very much driven by colleagues, by teachers. Generative AI is a technology that levels the playing field, in my view. So it's not just teachers, it's not just administrators using generative AI, but students will be using generative AI as well. And I think that makes a huge difference, probably, in the extent to which you can expect to see genuine digital transformation that is owned by everybody. Previous digital transformations, I think, were a little bit kind of dependent wholly, solely on the people teaching or the people managing and administrating in an institution. We're now in a situation where, it's a much more democratic situation here. We've got students able to use the same technology that we're trying to grapple with to make things better.
Doug, I wonder, from your experience, when AI tools are being introduced to workflow, do you usually see that people and teams are responding positively or negatively, or they're kind of somewhere in the middle?
You get the full spectrum, but I think the key thing is about how you introduce these tools, and I think also the way that people are responding has changed over time. So as Gunter said, him and I started working on workshops and introducing the concept of AI in education 2.5 years ago, and at that time there was a lot more negativity, a lot more pushback, a lot more concern, and then you both adapt the approach to introducing these things, but also people have time to settle into. And I would say that generally the response is much more positive now than it's been. I think the key thing is giving people the opportunity to be able to respond and reflect on what that means. So it's not a imposed tool, it's added into a workflow. People are allowed to explore it, people are allowed to feedback on how things are positively, negatively, but giving a little bit of voice to colleagues and to students as well about how those things are being implemented and how that's affecting them when they are implemented, I think is really important.
Just one question, once again, like channeling my inner skeptic. There is always a risk, right, that not only universities, but society at large gets too caught up on technology and innovation and not enough on people. And we've mentioned the importance of the value added of humans, right? The empathy, the human connection, something that technology and machines can't provide. So what do you think we risk losing, especially when it comes to human connection in education?
I don't think we're at risk of losing anything, but I see where your question is coming from. And let me put this into the context of leading a school of media and communication. We research, write, and teach about technologies. We are talking about social media, we're talking about digital medias, we're talking about internets, we're talking about television, film, all of these things. We're talking about virtual production, we're talking about what cameras work. But actually, what we're always talking about is humans talking to humans. We're always talking about communication. We're talking about how a creative idea gets developed for other humans, how we reach through a TV screen to make human connections, how we reach across social media to make human connections, how human connections can become damaged by people using technologies for unpleasant means. And AI doesn't fit anywhere outside of that ecosystem. AI is another way of mediating communication between humans. AI is reading human communications and translating them into further human communication. So I don't think that AI is taking away the idea of the human. I think if we position it so that it does, that is dangerous. But if we use it as a tool that automates and supports functions that, frankly, none of us want to be doing, precisely because they take us away from spending time with our students, spending time at home with our friends and our family because we're doing administrative tasks. If we use it there, then actually what we're doing is using it to grow human relationships. And I'm very of the opinion that AI cannot, will not, and in my particular school will not let it replace the ideas of mentorship, empathy, creativity, inspiration, community, all of those things that make a classroom, a learning environment, a university, a school, a community work. So it's a tool. It's a tool that can make life better, that can make life easier, that has risks, as all tools do, that has questions, as all tools do. But it's not the be all and end all. That human connection is. Always has been, always will be.
Yeah, thank you very much for these very interesting points. And now, before we wrap up, we've got a little tradition in this podcast where we ask our guests a round of rapid fire questions. The first one is provide your favorite statistics related to AI.
Nearly 1 billion people using ChatGPT. That shows you just how invasive this technology is, how accessible it is. And I think that's quite exciting. And if I might just add, what really excites me from a measurable point of view is the number of studies that are emerging of the positive impact of generative AI on people with learning difficulties.
That links very nicely to one of my favorite statistics around it, which comes from a McKinsey report that suggests that the AI in universities could help or is already helping increase student retention by up to 15%, which I know doesn't sound like an awful lot, but is actually quite a significant leap in student retention. And that will directly relate to AI supporting students with additional learning needs who would often drop out of university and enabling them to stay on in their studies.
Very interesting numbers that I will remember. What about describe AI in 3 words?
I would go with efficient, transformative, and adaptive.
And Gunter?
And I would say a useful co-worker.
Oh, nice.
Oh, very, very nice. You mentioned to make a sentence with your 3 words. So.
Yeah, I think it summarizes our discussion pretty well, right? For our AI glossary of terms, what is AI? How would you define it?
Non-biological intelligence.
What about you, Doug?
My definition of AI sort of comes from the definition of an algorithm. So an algorithm is just a step-by-step process that takes us from one thing to the next. But artificial intelligence does step-by-step process that creates a new insight that we might not have been able to to spot before just by that step-by-step process. So it takes an algorithm to the next level.
That's very interesting. So you defined already the algorithm for us. Gunter, do you have anything to add? What is an algorithm?
Very similar to the way Doug has explained it. A set of instructions that a computer program uses to produce an output. And I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, an LLM or a generative AI system like ChatGPT is a computer program. It's using algorithms to do what it does.
And now on to our leading question to kind of summarize beautifully our discussion. What human-centered approach to AI means in university management?
Employing artificial intelligence alongside humans, not instead of humans. The core things of being an academic, a lecturer, a teacher, a mentor are at the center of what we do at the university, and the AI is not on the periphery, but is the assistant to what we do and not the center of what we do.
Gunter, do you have anything to add to that?
Human-centered AI is about ensuring that we use AI to bring humans, and particularly colleagues at the university and students at the university, to bring humans closer together, not to push them further apart.
Brilliant. I think that's a really good kind of summary of what we discussed today. Now let's hear what generative AI had to say to this question.
Of course, no problem at all. So from a university leader's perspective, human-centered approach to AI in university management is all about putting the needs and well-being of students, faculty, and staff first. It means using AI to enhance their experiences rather than replace the human element. We focus on transparency, fairness, and accountability on AI systems and make sure that they truly support and empower our community. And of course, we continuously engage with everyone involved to make sure that these AI initiatives align with our core values and mission.
What are your thoughts? Do you agree, disagree with that?
I think OpenAI has stolen our thoughts.
It perfectly summarized everything that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I think so.
The thing you're never going to get from the AI is it's not going to say anything controversial about that topic. It's only going to say something nice. So, and the AI is not going to give you an answer where it says maybe it's a problem, because it's not going to talk itself down. So if we're talking it up in this podcast, it's not surprising the AI is matching us. I think if we were more negative, we might find that we disagreed with the AI a bit more.
That's a good takeaway and something to reflect on, right, as we move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this concludes our discussion today. Thank you very much for joining our podcast. I learned a whole lot about what using AI in university management actually looks like in daily tasks of faculty and staff. So I really appreciate you joining our conversation today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And this concludes our discussion for today. What we've heard is that AI is not a distant future for universities. It's actually already at work in the systems that manage everything from admissions to student support. As our guest highlighted, the real challenge is finding ways to use these tools responsibly without losing sight of the human side of education. So what do you think of today's theme? Share your thoughts in the comment section. And join us next time as we continue exploring the ways AI is shaping the future of education. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in our next episode.